Fathers. We could call it God talk, or you could call it strong fathers and not mean fathers. It's a Father's Day special. Thank you for joining me today, this late in the day. I was going to do it earlier, but I didn't do it all earlier. I did other stuff. And I'm talking to you through a frame because everything is through a frame. Everything is through a frame. Everyone's a star behind their bar. When I say bar, I mean the bars on their phone. Everyone's a star behind their bars. Everyone is now a star. Are you a star? Am I a star? Where are you, little star? Well, happy Father's Day, everybody. And I think I'll get down to brass tacks. I mean, my favorite college professors would pull stunts. No one ever did this, but they got our attention. I remember in the seventh grade, in the science class, the science teacher was like a straight guy with eyeglasses, and your kids are bored. I was more interested in the girl's hair in front of me than I was in science. And all of a sudden, he was mumbling on about vacuums. And the next thing I heard a slam on the back of the classroom, and he had thrown a balloon full of water against the lockers in the back of the room. And he was explaining something, which I've forgotten, but he got our attention. So I hope I've got your attention. Can you see me now? Can you hear me now? Because I'm a one-man show. So let's begin. I wanted to talk about Father's Day, strong fathers are not mean fathers, because it's an issue that I've had my whole life. I had a father who I thought was mean to me. Boo-hoo. But from his perspective, he was just being a strong father. He came from the old country. I thought from Russia, but it really wasn't Russia. It was, I think, Belarus, somewhere in Minsk, wherever that was, probably Ukraine, no, Belarus, I believe. And he came to a mean place, didn't speak the language. You can relate to the immigrants today, and didn't speak the language, and he had to make a living. He had no network, no internet to help him. So I don't know what he did. He had a struggle, however. My grandfather had come before him, 8 years before him, and had worked his ass off in his little tailor shop and then died rather young so that his son, my father, could have a better life. And although my father never made a big living, he made a decent enough living, enough to buy a small detached house in Queens, New York, which was to me paradise, truthfully. I mean, I knew people had bigger houses across the way, so-called detached houses, and Donald Trump lived across Union Turnpike in really, expensive houses, which look like mini houses to me today. But everything was relative to where you came from. So I started in the Bronx in an apartment, some tenement apartment, but it was clean. There was no crime. I told this story many times. The men were all home working. The women were all home. Children were safe in the streets to play in the streets. There was no molestation, no psychos touching children. I told you once, someone alluded to that a kid had been molested up on the Grand Concourse, and no one called the police. No one called Child Protective Services. Apparently, a man was thrown off the 8th story of the building, and molestation kind of stopped after that. The perv was thrown off the building. That's all. That was then. So I want to talk about strong fathers because my dad was, in my mind, a little tough on me. And he was afraid I was going to wind up a weakling because I was, not him. I didn't come from the old country. I mean, I heard stories that at 13 he had to drive a horse wagon, a wagon pulled by a horse in New York City, delivering laundry. And he had a big scar through his leg. He fell off the wagon. The horses got out of control, and a spike went through his leg. I mean, that was a tough life. So he was afraid that because I was, I guess, a dreamer, a sort of sensitive kid, my mind was always somewhere else. I wasn't like one of these kids who could, ace tests or anything. I was always somewhere else. My mind was always wandering. At least he thought it was, but it wasn't wandering. It was really working on bigger puzzles about the universe and about spirituality. I didn't know it at the time. I was just a kid. Now, I've written about these things in various books, psychological nudity and whatever. And then the last version of that is A Savage Life. And many of these stories are in here. I'm not going to read the stories to you today, but I do want to begin by talking about fathers because it's Father's Day and many of you miss your father or your father's dead. And I become the father to many of you or the uncle to many of you. And we have a weakling, senile father in the presidency, a man who, if he was your father, you'd put him in a nursing home. You wouldn't let him to go on like this. So I have very few pictures of my father. I've talked about my mother many times. And I'm not going to bash the man. He did whatever he could. But here's a father story. Here's my father, Never Sink River, the famous Abraham and Isaac scene. Let's see if you could see this picture. There it is. Okay. That's Dad. Good-looking guy. Looked like, I don't know, a certain type of guy. De Niro, this and that. Certain type of guy. There's me at 15 trying to be a tough kid with the weightlifting, with the T-shirt. There I am wearing the dead man's pants. But the thing is the father. So that story of him, Never Sink River, is a famous Abraham and Isaac story. And it'll give you an idea of how he brought me up. I must have been, I don't know, 5, 4, who remembers? And we were up in South Fallsburg, New York, and there was a waterfall. I mean, it was a real waterfall. It went through town and fell down. If you fell on it, you could get killed. So naturally, we kids were told to be afraid of it and not go near the waterfall because we could get swept over and get killed. So my father took me out in a rubber tube into the river, somewhere above the waterfall. How far up, I do not recall. It was within the realm of the town, and you could hear the waterfall downstream. And what he did was, he says, I'm pushing you over the waterfall, and he scared the hell out of me. He pushed the tube away from him, and I started to scream. I'm a kid, just a little kid. He was sadistic, to be honest with you. I thought he was pushing me over the waterfall to kill me, but he was pushing me upstream, not downstream. Now listen to this. So I'm screaming out of fear. I'm a little kid. I didn't have the presence of mind to know I was pushed upstream. And then the water took me downstream into his arms. He said, I was just kidding. I was just kidding. Well, it's fucked my mind up, to be honest with you. It's an Abraham and Isaac story. Do you get that one? He may as well put a knife to my throat and threaten to kill me. Why did he do a thing like that to me? Was he trying to make me stronger? Or was he just sadistic trying to hurt me because he could? Well, I'll let you decide. This is what I've been thinking about all my life. So I say, when I became a father many years later, I said, I will never do to my son or my daughter what he did to me. Never. Whatever he did to me, I will do the opposite. And that's what I tried to do. Now, I'm not sure I achieved it. I'm sure I lost my temper along the way. And I'm sure they can tell stories that are not too pleasant. But I never would have messed with their heads in that way. Now, there's another story that I told in the past about working with cyanide solution, another Abraham and Isaac job. So it's a long story. I don't know if I'm in the mood for it. I'm a little tired right now. It's like almost dinner time here on the West Coast. Many of you have eaten already. You're ready to go to sleep. You're watching movies. Who the hell knows what you're doing? I don't know. Another Trump rally probably in the middle of the night, and we're watching Biden being led off the stage by Obama. I've seen these videos. I can't believe what I'm watching. I told you before, I'm not the world's expert, but I worked in the field of Alzheimer's disease. I had a small research facility called the Alzheimer's Research Institute 30 years ago, and I watched this. The decline is like this. It doesn't go up. They have good days. They have bad days. They're worse at night than they are during the day, which is why Biden skipped dinner the other night at the G7 meeting. Never mind what the little freak said about him, that lying little thing that works for him. He couldn't make dinner because he was shot. It's when he wandered off, when parachuters came out, he was like staring. This is not a joke. Remember, this man has the power to destroy the world, and he's doing a pretty damn good job of it, by the way. Which leads me to politics, not the cyanide story, which I don't even want to tell you anymore. I told it too many times. I think you can find that story somewhere else. But Biden is a classically weak, deceptive man who is extremely dangerous, and now he's senile, being manipulated by other weak, deceptive men and women. Okay? And that is why we are at war around the world. Why Israel's at war? why we're at war with Russia. It's because we have a weak, deceptive president. He's a weak man, not a strong man. Weak men make war. Strong men make peace. You got it? Did you get it through your cup? Weak men make war. Strong men make peace. So here's a statue for you to think about. And you're going to see it and you're going to have an immediate reaction. Who is this? It's a statue of Napoleon Bonaparte. So when I say Napoleon to you, you think strong man. He was actually a weak man. I'll tell you that in a minute. He was not a strong man. He was a very weak man. And he launched wars to prove how strong he was. He was 5'1". He had a little man's complex, and he launched wars. And he made the biggest mistake of his life when he invaded Russia. And then the winter set in, and the French couldn't withdraw. And I believe the number is 200,000 to 500,000 Frenchmen died in the snow trying to withdraw back to France. And France never recovered from this weak man's war against Russia. Never. France never recovered. That's why the women became, it's a family show. That's why the women became what they became in France. They didn't have men. The men all died off. The same thing is going on now in Ukraine with another little Napoleon called Zelensky. Make no mistake about it. He is Napoleon in his own mind. Short man, just like Napoleon. Weak man, just like Napoleon. And he's trying to prove how strong he is. With the green shirt and the Fidel Castro outfit, you would think he would have upgraded his wardrobe by now. It's not a laughing matter. He has now dragged America into this huge proxy war against Russia. And who knows where this ends? I'm not a crystal ball reader. Okay, we keep provoking Russia. Russia's a nuclear power, I have to remind you again. And so Zelensky, the weak man, gets hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars rather, from us and shakes Europe down. And all the weak leaders of Europe keep giving this little Napoleon more money. How do they think this is going to end? They don't know history, these morons. The idiot who runs France, he looks like a weasel to me. A weasel. They say far right is winning in France. It's actually not far right. What they are is a sane party trying to stop the war before they wind up nuked by Russia. That's number one. And they don't want the Muslims taking over France anymore. And they don't want Africans invading and raping their women in France. So what? That's far right? So a big march in France yesterday against the rise of the far right. There was not one French flag seen amongst the mob of marchers, all Muslims and Africans with signs against racism. See, you know how the game is played? That's how they intimidate white people or European Americans here or Europeans there. They say racist. I say afangu to you. You're the racist, Johnson. You come to my country and you shit in my country. You rape the women. You live on welfare. You don't work. You do nothing for this country. You're a leech. You're a parasite. No, you're the racist and you're the criminal. But then again, I'm only a podcaster, and I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to get upset again. The last time I was live was last week, and I got sick after the show. I went on Newsmax, and it was when a group of face-covered scumbag cowards were on a subway car coming back from one of their Nazi rallies, the Palestinian rally, the Nazi Palestinian rally, and they went on a subway car in New York and said, "Are there any Zionists aboard?" And they frightened everyone in the subway car. Someone should have shot them dead in the subway car. They should have done a Bernie on them. They should have pulled out guns and killed them, in my opinion. That's coming anyway. You know, there's only so much people can take. You rip the masks off. Who are these people? Are they citizens? Are they ISIS members? Who knows who they are? But only in a country run by a weakling fraud like Biden and a weakling director of every agency in this country. No FBI investigation, but a woman who marched outside an abortion clinic, 75 years old, was arrested for threatening the abortionist. You hear this? That's the FBI, and that's the Homeland Security Department. It's unbelievable, the country we're living in right now. So weak men make war, strong men try to make peace. We are ruled by weak men and weak women who are psychotic, and they're dangerous. They're extremely dangerous right now. Bernie gets. Thank you very much. There's going to be more Bernies very soon. People are not going to be intimidated by the scarf-wearing Palestinian Nazis much longer in New York. And a few Jews will pull out a 22. That'll be the end of the who was a Jew on the car. The circus is over, boys and girls. The music is over, boys and girls. The circus is over. The circus is over. I think maybe I've said enough for the day. What do you want more? Well, I know you want more. You always want more. Everybody wants more than they get. So I'll give you more since you want more. I was going to do a separate show from one of my books, and the chapter title was this. I'll show it to you rather than saying it because it ties right into what I'm talking about. Okay, look at the subchapter. Where are we? Here we are. The liberal warmongers. You got it? Okay, there we go. The liberal warmongers. Okay, and the book is from just after Trump won. It was a New York Times bestseller for a couple of weeks. Trump's war. And I wrote this subchapter called The Liberal Warmongers, and it's not a paradox, and it's not meant in a state of irony. So I will read pieces of this to you, and you'll understand what I'm talking with you about. But if you're on YouTube, you must do the like thing. You must subscribe because I don't charge you for any of this. It's all free. So I'm giving you a special Father's Day show today. Yeah, but the dad looked like Jake LaMotta. You're right, Mark. You're right. I met Jake LaMotta years later, by the way. It's an interesting story. Jake LaMotta was the original character that De Niro played in that boxing movie, whatever he did. Who the hell remembers the name of the movie? Anyone know that boxing movie that the nut job did? But he was playing Jake LaMotta, right? Where him and the brother fought all the time. Anyway, so years later, I was already on the radio. This must have been 95, 96, 97. And I had become something of a personality here in San Francisco. People had never heard anything like this. They were all thinking what I was saying, but no one dared say it because the city is fundamentally a very kind city, but a very strong city. The Raging Bull, the Irish and the Italians who built this city loved me to death. And I'd meet a lot of them up in the restaurant in North Beach where my friend Lorenzo, when he was still alive. And he said to me, do you want to meet Jake LaMotta? He's in town. I was amazed. Yeah, I mean, he was a hero of my father and of me, Jake LaMotta, tough as nails, right? So I met him. He was an ordinary. Here's the thing about really tough guys. They don't act tough. The fakers act tough. The real guys who are very tough don't act tough. They are just tough. You get it? Anyway, I met Jake LaMotta, but let me get back to this, the liberal warmongers, and I'll see what you think of that. Yeah, raging fool, from raging bull to raging fool, Joe Biden. The liberal warmongers, tell me what you think of this. Trump's war against the war machine. Just as they cannot achieve their warped version of equality within society peacefully, neither can they achieve worldwide equality peacefully. Good line. Actually, a perfect line. That's why the left has taken this nation to war constantly for the past 100 years. It is beyond their comprehension that some alien cultures may not be ready for their brand of pure democracy. Some may not want it, but they can't just leave these societies alone to work things out on their own. Just like they couldn't leave a devoutly Christian baker in peace and let a gay couple take their business elsewhere, they can't leave foreign societies in peace when they don't live up to the liberal ideal of absolute equality. In this insane pursuit, liberals constantly violate that first law of nature. They constantly seek war instead of peace. Before George H.W. Bush, it was liberals who started all the wars in the 20th century. I'll bet you didn't realize that. Well, look it up. It's true. Not only do liberals seek absolute equality between the sexes and absolute income equality, but they seek worldwide political equality, regardless of whether alien cultures want to be equal to Americans or not. This is what was behind Hillary Clinton's unhinged reign as Secretary of State. She went around the Middle East with a flamethrower, apparently believing she could burn down dictatorships and the flower of democracy would sprout from the ashes. She's been in bed with the savages of Saudi Arabia for so long, she couldn't see how crazy it was to expect anything but what we got after Gaddafi was gone in Libya, jihadist anarchy. She wanted to do the same thing in Syria. And then I go on from there, and I don't want to read anymore. You can read it yourself. Many of you bought this book, but it's a chapter on the liberal warmongers in Trump's war against the war machine. And then I go into a few other things that Putin's in there. Let me read this. Just as liberals have been at war with religion within our own society, still makes sense, right? They are at war with it internationally. They ignored the atrocities of the Soviet Union because it prohibited religion. They demonize the restored Russia because it recognizes that society cannot live without religion or some equivalent set of moral principles. As John Adams said of our own Constitution, it was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Being pro-religion isn't Putin's only sin against the liberal religion. He's also mocked the climate change hoax in the past, although he's recently sold out to the enviro-fascists, and he opposes abortion. Worst of all, he isn't the communist. He even lectured Obama about the evils of socialism at a Davos conference, although his wise advice went unheeded. These are the real reasons the left hates Putin. Yes, he's a former KGB agent who may have disappeared a few political opponents. I don't know if those accusations are true or not. As I said, he's no angel, but he's been a voice of reason on the world stage, while Emperor Obama and his hatchet woman, Hillary Clinton, destroyed the international order and set barbaric jihadists loose all over the Middle East. And just like Trump, Putin refuses to bow to the globalist elites who want to run the world out of Washington, D.C. We've avoided the feminist sororities war with Russia for the moment, but Trump is going to be under pressure to start it from them and their echo chamber media for his entire presidency. The liberal warmongers won't rest until the entire world is an egalitarian, socialist, perverted wasteland. And then I go into the neocons about the other side of the aisle, the Republicans who are exactly the same. This was all in Trump's war. It's why it was on the New York Times bestseller list as number one for 2 weeks in a row. And it was followed up with a sequel and then another sequel. And now, of course, this is the last iteration, a savage republic inside the plot to destroy America, which I'm not going to talk about because the circus is over. The liberal warmongers, weak men, and weak and deranged women have brought us to the brink of nuclear war, all the while an overtly senile president is literally stumbling around on the world stage, making a mockery not only of himself, but of the United States of America as well. And so, as I said to you at the outset, there is no predicting where this ends. We do not know what could set off a nuclear exchange between Russia and God knows what other nation. It may not even be us. It could be the weasel in France who triggers a nuclear war because he's desperate to maintain power. Now, he came to power, Macron, having come from the Rothschild Bank. Does that ring a bell to you? I hate to tell you, I know so much. The Rothschild Bank, if you look up the history of Macron and his old wife, I mean, that's a hell of a story right there. Marries the child she's babysitting. You know, there's something weird in that man and his wife. And when Joey let one go the other day on stage outside the celebration for the the D-Day invasion, and Joe let one go, and Jill had to let him. You could see their faces go like this for 1 second. Macron's wife goes, and Jill like that. They sniff. Yeah, I'm not making a joke now. He let one go, and they had to take him out and change him. Do you understand this? Do you understand what the hell is going on in this world? I'm talking to you the way I would if I was sitting in the back of a cafe having a sandwich with you and having a coffee or a drink. This is how real people see it. Okay, forget the glossed over crap. This is how real people talk. And if you haven't learned how real people talk, you'll learn now by listening to me because I talk the way real people think. So I've told you what I wanted to tell you. There's no point in beating it up and going on and on and on. and staying on the air just to hog the microphone. I've been with you a certain amount of time. I can look and see exactly how long it is, whatever it may be. It's long enough. I can tell you right now. And soon I'm going to knock it off and make myself a very light dinner because I had a beautiful big dinner last night. I'll talk about food in a minute. I'll get distracted. How long have I been with you? The timing is somewhere. 25 minutes and 19 seconds. Obama last night had to lead the hologram off the stage. It was frightening. The hologram stood there. So everyone applauds when Obama comes out and the hologram is some other character. And the hologram freezes. And he hears noise. And just like a person with dementia, he freezes and he's attracted by the noise and he freezes and he doesn't leave the stage. And the snake of snakes, the secret Islamist, Obama, who never forget was trained in a madrasas in Indonesia as a little boy. Okay, once a Muslim, always a Muslim. Goes up like we don't see it happening and leads him off the stage. The same way Maloney, the phony of Italy, led him away from the thing the other day down there in the D-Day landing when he got frozen looking at a parachutist. Froze, walked away and froze like this. So she had to come over. And then all of the phonies, the killers of the world, the 7 families, the killers of the universe, they're worse than the original 5 families. They've killed more people. These 7 leaders have killed more people than the 5 families in New York, by the way. That's a separate story. And they're less honorable than most of those people. But that's a separate story for another time. It's not for me to tell. It's for someone else to tell who knows the story better than I do. So the 7 killers from the G7, they see him frozen and they surround him. And like they make believe no one saw it. The king has no brain, okay? Do you realize how dangerous the world is right now? The tinderbox of what left-wingers have done. These extreme, I'm not talking about liberals. I grew up with decent liberals. These are not liberals. These are really bad, far-left, dangerous, socialist, New World Order, one world government, psychotics. All of them. Not a single one is different. I thought the leader of Italy would have been different. Maloney, I don't know her name. I had hope for her, but she was right there covering up. She was told on cue that if he does that, she'd be the one to go up to him. And what a bad sense of clothing she has. She wore the ugliest pants I've ever seen in my life. Who wears pants like Maloney? I mean, the Italians are known for style. She wore like culottes, which is the ugliest thing ever designed for women by gay men to make women look like men who had their penises cut off with ugly pants. I never saw anything like it. How could she not understand what she looked like with those hideous pants with the wide bell bottoms? What, is she crazy? She comes from Italy, for God's sake. Anyway, but that's not the worst of it. I'm just trying to get a little comedic in the political arena to lighten it up. It's Father's Day. I had a beautiful Father's Day evening last night. One of my children came down with a friend of hers, and we went to my favorite restaurant. They let me pick the restaurant. They know the place I like the most. And I had a nice night. I mean, it was just a nice night with a child you love, an adult child, okay? There's nothing better as to have lived long enough to have seen my children become adults. It's a beautiful thing. God, you talk about Father's Day. What is better for a father than to see his children grow to be adults and to have achieved in their lives wonderful things from having worked so hard, both of them so hard. I didn't give them money. I gave them the idea of hard work, that education is very important. That's about what I gave them, which may be the greatest gift you can give a child. So it was a beautiful Father's Day evening, but there was a story I have to tell you to go with it. If you want it, only if you want it. Do you want a story from last night or not? I'll tell you the story. No, that was the night before the spaghetti. That was the day before for lunch. That was in North Beach in an Italian restaurant. That was a different story. I went over the bridge into San Francisco for the first time in maybe a year. It was beautiful. Okay, so last night I go to my favorite place, which is this Basque restaurant up in San Rafael. And I know the father. I knew the father. I know the young man who owns it now. His father passed away. Love both of them. They're like family to me. It's my second home. So we go up there. It's pretty crowded, and they're understaffed. Most restaurants are understaffed these days. The reason I chose it, I could have gone to any restaurant in the Bay Area, from the most expensive and this and that. But I to me, food is everything. It's the food. I have always enjoyed the food up there, and I always have. I've never gotten sick in that place, which is a big deal because I got takeout food from another Italian joint on Wednesday. I was sick for 2 days. The clams were small. They looked like I don't want to get vulgar, but they were like small clams. The meat didn't look that good. I shouldn't have eaten them. It was linguine clam sauce, which I've had before. I get the white clam sauce, no butter. I'm on a saturated fat restricted diet for forever, and I got sick. It triggered an allergic reaction in me. I had palpitations. I got very sick. I had to take medication, which I never have to do. Never. It was frightening. But last night was a good night. Everything's fine. And the meal's going on. And then I see the owner comes out of the kitchen where he's working his ass off, cooking with this main chef, Juan, and the three guys, and the pans are flying, the food. And I love the kitchen. And he's busy. Meanwhile, he has to come offline from the kitchen and talk to a couple about something. And I'm a guy who watches everything in a restaurant. A fly doesn't fly through the dining room that I don't see. I always sit with my back to a wall. I have this here and I have that there. I have the bag here. I'm always watching. And I have two women with me. Okay. And one of the women was pregnant, not my daughter, another woman. She's 6 months pregnant. And we're sitting there. And I want to make sure there's no trouble in the restaurants. I watch everything. Now, restaurants are having trouble keeping workers, in California in particular, because of the laws and rules are insane. And this guy's doing a great job. The food is incredible. And I see him come out of the kitchen, and he's like kowtowing to a couple across from me, like over there. Now, I'm going to say something, and don't take it the wrong way. They were an Asian couple. I could see she was Japanese, and he was a different kind of Asian guy, maybe Indonesian or Malaysian. Older people, and he's kowtowing to them. I see there's a problem going on. So naturally, being who I am, after I ushered the ladies to the car, I had to go back and talk to the owner. I had to find out what happened. So he's in the kitchen schwitzing, cooking the pans and this and that. I say, Patrick, what the hell what's going on with them? He said, Michael, you don't even want to hear this story. It's just awful. He said, she claimed that we were prejudiced against Asian people because they were made to wait. I said, what? Everyone had to wait. Everyone was waiting because it's Father's Day that night. Before Father's Day, oh no, she came in with a chip on her shoulder and she kept drilling him. You picked on us. You didn't serve us because we're Asian. Total bullshit. So this guy is a nice guy struggling to make the business work, and they don't let it go. So I said, look, there's a way to deal with it. I gave him an idea what to do before the night was over. And then the night ends. Naturally, I have to follow it up. And I call him today and I say, Patrick, what the hell was going on there? He said, Michael, I swear. He said, the waiter had come over to them just like everyone else. They were undecided about the food. And then he had to go to other tables. And by the time he came back, they were already pissed off. I said, bullshit. They came in with a chip on their shoulder and they were trying to set you up for a lawsuit. What, they want a free meal? He said, well, I had to give them a free dessert and free drinks. I said, I knew it. Just bastards using race as a weapon. I said, you're lucky I'm not your partner, because I would have kicked them out on their asses. I would have said, get the hell out of my restaurant, you grifter bastards, and sue me if you want. And I'll sue you for reverse discrimination, you bastards. You're in here for a free meal. Get the hell out of here. So he's a younger guy who owns it. And I said, let me tell you something. I heard these stories when I was growing up about people who would do this in restaurants. They use the race card. Oh, we're the only Asians in it. It's not true. I've seen Asians in there all the years I've eaten. It's bullshit. But she came in with a chip on her shoulder, this one. This is what she does probably for a free dessert. Okay, I would have thrown her out of the restaurant. Said, get the hell out of here and don't pay and never come back again. And by the way, if you bash me on Yelp, I will sue you for defamation. People are doing that now for slander. I mean, I can't believe what they'll do to a restaurant over nothing, right? Everybody wants to be a victim to go home and tell everyone they're a victim. So you got to give them free dessert, these two pigs, and a drink and a this and a that, and kowtow to them. So I said, they leave a tip? Yes. They left a 15% tip. I said, that's a shock that they didn't want a free meal. And they were bullies. They were using their race as a weapon. I know that. So I don't know if they'll ever come back, but it was a horrible story for me to see. And I mean, I had to wait too for service. I'm used to it. I mean, you go out a night before Father's Day in a restaurant like that, a family restaurant. What do you think is going to happen? Right? So they came in with the chip on their shoulder and they wanted a free meal. And I said, Patrick, let me tell you something. I heard this when I was growing up as a kid. Back during the Great Depression, I was told, I wasn't alive at the time, people were poor and they wanted to eat for free. Listen what they did. They put on the goods clothing they had left if they were very poor, and they would take a piece of glass or a nail in their pocket. They'd go into a generally an upscale restaurant, and they'd sit and enjoy the meal. They'd get the free meal. They'd get a drink. They'd eat well. Now, this is during the Great Depression. And at the end, they'd pull out the nail or the piece of glass, and when no one's looking, they'd shove it into the mashed potato or under the meatloaf. And then they're eating and they're patting their oh my God, waiter, come over here right away. Look what I found in my mashed potatoes. And they pick up the nail. There was a nail, a glass in are you kidding me? I'm going to go to the authorities. Oh no, sir, please don't do that. I don't know if I've eaten some other glass. I might die from your food. The waiter says, sir, please be our guest tonight. And we won't charge you. I hope you're well. And I'm sure. And it was a scam. That's what people did for free meals back in the Great Depression days, just like some scam artists now use their race as a weapon to get a free meal, a free dessert, or a free drink. That's what's going on, okay? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. And these reviews on Yelp, oh my God, and it's not good when you get disgruntled employees or cheapskates like that. They go on and say that this one did this. He told me another story that another person of a certain race didn't complain once during the meal, and she was with a bigger party and no one said a word, and she went home and bashed him on Yelp, and he can't afford it on a little restaurant like that. So this is what people have to put up with that business. Lucky I'm not in the business. There'd be no one left. I said, if I were your partner, you wouldn't have a business after a week because I'd throw half the people out. And he laughed. He said, I wish I could still do it. I said, let me tell you another story going back 40 years ago in the Bay Area. This is out in Inverness. There was a guy who owned a Czech restaurant, and I forget his name. He was Vladimir's Czech restaurant. I said, so Vladimir has an interesting story to tell. He's since dead. I know all these restaurant stories, and I told Patrick the story. I said, so Vladimir he escapes communist Czechoslovakia. He was a pro skier, like top level, and he skied over a mountain from Czechoslovakia into, I think, West Germany, and he escaped the Soviet Union. He skied out, comes to America, and like many immigrants, worked his ass off as a dishwasher, saved his money, didn't blow it up his nose or drink himself to death or whore it away. And he opens a little restaurant in an obscure town out in Inverness, and it becomes a big success, and you got to book it to get it. I used to go there 40 years ago when the kids were young, and it was a great place to be after going to the beach on a winter's day. Well, we'd even go on the beach on a winter's day now that I think of it out there. And you'd come in and it was packed, and there was a fire going, and he would be holding court, and every table was full, and basically a lot of meat and this and that, old style, old European food that I don't eat anymore. And he'd walk around table to table like old European style hosts, and he'd talk to people. So he comes up to one table of about 6 people. I remember I was there. And he says to one of the people, and what do you do for a living, sir? And the guy said, well, I work for the Bank of America. He said, you work for a bank? He says, you're a usurer. You don't work for a bank. You're a usurer. Get the hell out of my restaurant. All of you, get out of my restaurant. He kicked everyone at that table out, 7, and didn't charge him a dime. This is old school. Threw them out of the restaurant, I swear to God, just to make a point. This is what he did, Vladimir. He didn't add up the money, what he was losing. He didn't worry about getting sued. He threw the guy out in the street. He said, well, I didn't do anything. I don't care what you did. You're a usurer. Get out of my restaurant. Goodbye. Boom. Threw him out. That's the way the old guys used to do it. So that's why I'm not in the restaurant business. I wouldn't last a week. Half the people would be thrown out of the restaurant for one reason or another. Either they would talk too loud, or the guy would have his baseball hat on, or he put it on backwards, or the woman would throw down too many wines and start screeching and screaming. No one would last. I'd be alone in there with the staff after 1 week. So that's why I'm not in the restaurant business. So that's my Father's Day show. Leave it on a high note, and I'll leave it on a good note, not on a low note. And if you're on YouTube, you hit the like button. And that's the story today. I'm in the frame with you today, the frame of life. And with God's will and your patronage, I have a good podcast coming up, by the way. The one that we did Friday was with Trump Jr. We have a better one coming up Tuesday because I haven't done it yet. I'm going to talk with the famed novelist Jeff Rovin tomorrow morning, and we're going to do a wrap of the news of the week tomorrow morning. I waited to tomorrow to post to Tuesday. Jeff's a genius. Jeff's a genius. If you've seen him before, Jeff Rovin, he's written 30 of the books by Tom Clancy. He's just a brilliant overall guy, and he and I have great rapport. So when we have a conversation, this is better than any conversation you ever heard in your life, right? And he is very smart. He's been a martial artist since he's a child. He was taught by an Italian gangster martial arts in New York when he was a kid, and he went on all his life with some Chinese masters and God knows what. He's a guy in his 70s, very spiritual, long hair, looks like a guru. You wouldn't expect it, but I'm sure he could throw you onto the third rail if you messed with him. So he and I have a wonderful conversation. That's going to be up Tuesday. But he said something to me. He said, Michael, I've been watching your YouTube pieces. This was before. And he said, you're getting too into it. It's affecting you. And it was. That's why I blew up on Wednesday. I wound up taking medication. I had to call a doctor. It was awful because it was the Palestinian Nazis on the subway saying, are there any Zionists aboard? Get off the train. I made a commitment when my child was born. If Hitler ever came back, I would kill them. Luckily, I wouldn't do such a thing. I said I made that commitment 50 years ago. I wouldn't do such a thing. But I saw the Nazis in the headscarves on that subway car. And if everyone stood up and said, we're all Zionists, what would have happened? And then punched the lights out of those, ripped their scarves off their Palestinian kiafas and strangled them with it. Strangled them and dragged them off the subway car when it stopped onto the platform. That would have been beautiful. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Happy Father's Day. I warned 50 years ago that when Hitler came back, he wouldn't be wearing a swastika and playing in an Papa band. He'd be wearing a headscarf, chanting to Allah. Have a nice day, Ray. Okay, we're through. We're done. That's my Father's Day thing. I got to find the end show thing here. It's always bewildering. I can't find it. There is end stream. I don't like when it says end stream. It reminds me of being like at a doctor's office. It's midstream. Okay, have a nice night. Hit the like button. Subscribe so you know when I'm going to go live. I only do these when I want. There's no set time for me to do them. I got to be in the right headspace. I've got to have something important to say. I mean, I wrote this down last night. I knew I was going to do it today as God Talk. Strong fathers are not mean fathers. And I began with a family story about the Neversink River and ended with another story about the Nazis who are now in headscarves.